It happens in a crowded subway car. Someone collapses. And for a few long seconds, nobody moves. You see it. Everyone sees it. And yet the car stays still. That pause, that strange, suffocating pause, is not cruelty. It is not laziness. It is one of the most powerful and least understood forces in human psychology. And it has been shaping your behavior since the day you were born. It has a name. Psychologists call it the bystander effect. And once you understand what is actually happening inside your brain during those frozen seconds, you will never look at a crowd the same way again. Let's go back to 1964. A young woman named Kitty Genovese is walking home in Queens, New York at 3 a.m. She is attacked. She screams. And according to the original reports, 38 neighbors hear her. 38 people, lights on in their windows, awake in the night. And not one of them calls the police in time to save her. The story spread like a shockwave through American society. Newspapers called it a portrait of urban apathy. Sociologists called it a symptom of modern alienation. But two psychologists named John Darley and Bib Latany looked at that story and asked a different question. Not what was wrong with those people, but what was happening inside them. What they discovered changed the way science understands human behavior in groups forever. Darley and Latany ran a now famous series of experiments at Columbia University in 1968. They placed subjects alone in a room and piped in the sound of someone having a seizure in the next room. When the subject believed they were the only person who could hear it, 85% of them left the room within 2 minutes to get help. But when subjects believed other people were also listening, that number dropped to 31%. Same emergency, same sound, same person screaming for help. The only thing that changed was how many people the subject thought were nearby. More people, less action. That is the paradox at the center of the bystander effect. But why? Why does adding more witnesses make each individual less likely to help? Your brain, it turns out, is running two quiet calculations at the same time. And in a crowd, both of them fail. The first is called diffusion of responsibility. When you are alone and something goes wrong, the responsibility to act lands entirely on you. You feel the full weight of it. But the moment you are surrounded by other people, that weight gets divided, not consciously, not deliberately. Your brain simply distributes the moral load across every person in the room. And when responsibility belongs to everyone, it belongs to no one. The second calculation is even more primal. It is called pluralistic ignorance. You are standing in a crowd, watching something strange unfold. You are not sure if it is actually an emergency, so you do what humans have always done when they face uncertainty. You look at the people around you, and here is the trap. Every single person around you is doing exactly the same thing. Everyone is watching everyone else for a signal. And because everyone is staying calm, because everyone is performing calm in order to not look foolish, the whole group reads that collective stillness as evidence that nothing is wrong. You talk yourself out of acting, not because you do not care, but because 100 other frozen faces told you not to. This is the social proof mechanism that psychologist Robert Cialdini later described as one of the most powerful forces in human decision-making. In uncertain situations, people look to others to define reality. And in an emergency, that instinct can be catastrophic. Social psychologist Bib Latany would spend decades studying this dynamic. And what he found in his research is that the effect does not require a cold or indifferent crowd. It emerges just as powerfully in groups of friends, in families, in tight communities. The relationship between the bystanders does not matter. The math does. The size of the group overrides the warmth of the individuals inside it. Now consider what this means about you specifically. You are not a bad person. You are not uniquely passive or cowardly. You are an animal whose brain evolved to read social cues at lightning speed, to defer to the group, to avoid standing out, to minimize the cost of being wrong in public. Those instincts kept your ancestors alive. In a world of predators and unknown plants and hostile neighboring tribes, the person who waited to see what others did before acting was often the person who survived. But evolution did not build you for the modern world. It did not build you for subway cars and anonymous crowds and emergencies that last only seconds. The instincts that protected your ancestors are the same instincts that freeze you in place when someone falls on the pavement 10 feet away. And there is something even stranger buried underneath all of this. Researcher Mark Levine at Lancaster University published a study in 2011 showing that the bystander effect is not fixed. It is not an iron law of human nature. It is a rule that bends depending on one critical variable: identity. When bystanders share a group identity with the victim, when they feel like they are part of the same tribe, the same team, the same community, the effect reverses. Helping goes up. Responsibility stops diffusing and starts concentrating. The crowd becomes a resource rather than an obstacle. This means the bystander effect is not really about numbers. It is about distance. The psychological distance between you and the person in front of you. When that distance collapses, when you see them as part of your world, your people, your story, your brain rewrites the calculation entirely. And this has been demonstrated in the most unexpected places. Soccer fans are more likely to help an injured stranger on the street if that stranger is wearing the jersey of their team. Soldiers are more likely to run toward danger for a fellow soldier than for a civilian. Neighbors are more likely to intervene in a domestic dispute if they recognize the voice screaming inside, "You help your people." The bystander effect appears when you do not know whose people you are looking at. Now here is something that the original 1964 story got wrong. The 38 witnesses who did nothing. That number was later revised significantly. Reporting errors, incomplete interviews, neighbors who claimed they had called, others who simply did not understand what they had heard. The Kitty Genovese story, as it was told for decades, was partly a myth. A powerful, clarifying myth that launched an entire field of research, but a myth nonetheless. What actually happened that night was more complicated, more human, more ambiguous than the headlines admitted, and that complexity is more interesting than the simple story of evil indifference, because it means the bystander effect is not a story about monsters. It is a story about ordinary people running ordinary mental software in an extraordinary moment. The good news is that knowing about the bystander effect is one of the only known ways to partially escape it. Studies show that people who have been educated about diffusion of responsibility and pluralistic ignorance are measurably more likely to intervene in an emergency. The awareness creates a short circuit. Your brain notices the freeze and asks, why? There is also a specific technique that emergency response trainers teach. If you are ever in a crowd and someone needs help, do not call out to the group. Do not say, "Someone call 911. Point at one specific person. Look them in the eyes. Say, "You call 911. Name them with your gaze. Collapse the diffusion instantly. Make the responsibility specific, personal, and impossible to pass along. That one move cuts through the effect like a blade, because the bystander effect runs on anonymity. It runs on the comfortable fiction that someone else will handle it. Take away the anonymity, and the whole mechanism falls apart. You live in a world with more strangers than your brain was ever designed to process. More people, more noise, more ambiguous emergencies in more public places. The friction is not going away, but the knowledge of what is happening inside your head. That knowledge changes something. The next time you are in a crowd, and something shifts, and everyone around you goes still, and your brain tells you to look around and see what others do. Remember what that stillness actually means. It does not mean nothing is wrong. It does not mean someone else is handling it. It means everyone around you is waiting for the same signal you are. Be the signal. Because tonight, just like every night, you will walk past strangers whose lives you cannot read. And somewhere in a crowd, in a moment you will not expect, a pair of eyes will scan the faces around them, looking for one person willing to act. The question